The Maimer of Gimel Shvat Tafshin Daled Mem, Parshas Boy, 40 years ago, in honor of upcoming Pesach Sheni, and this Maimer also has the energy and strength of a teaching of the Rebbe 40 years after it was taught, as we've discussed previously, and this also helps us in our day-to-day life. Torah is Miloshen Hira. Torah instructs us, guides us, and especially the way the Rebbe shares teachings according to Chassidus. So the Maimer begins as Eretz Mitzrayim. Lil Shimurim Hu La'Havai Leitzion Me'Eretz Mitzrayim. It was in the very essence of the height of the day of the Exodus. All of the hosts of God left the land of Egypt. It was a night of guarding for God to take them out of Egypt. So we'll discuss this. There are a few places in the Torah where it says in the essence of the day, and when God, so to speak, was threatened, or for instance, Noah was told to go into the ark, and they threatened him that he won't be able to go. They'll hold him back from going to the ark. So God said, "You'll see. You'll go at high noon. You'll go into the ark." And that's when Abraham did the circumcision, etc. So here, when of course Pharaoh said he wouldn't send them out, he said they'll go out at high noon. But this followed the night before, which was when they ate the Passover offering, and there was the smiting of the firstborn, when God passed over each and every Jewish home that had the blood of the offering, as is well known. So let's discuss this. So the Rebbe continues. And the fifth Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Sholem Ber, also teaches about this specifically in his discourse, which begins with the same words that was recited in 1895. The Rebbe says parenthetically that at this time, 40 years ago, in Shvat, they had just recently published these Mamorim for the first time. So the Rebbe Rashab says, we have to understand, the beginning of the verse, it says, in the essence of the day, at high noon, they left. That's when the Exodus was. So the Exodus was during the day. And in the subsequent verse it says that it was in the very essence of the day God took out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt. Then it says this is a night of guarding. So are we talking about the day or are we talking about the night? To take them out from this, for this it seems like they went out at night. Maybe so then he brings what the sages taught in the Talmud, Laila. It also says, God took you out of Egypt at night. The Gemara asks, did they leave at night? Didn't they go out during the day? And now the Talmud brings a different verse. It says on the morrow of the bringing and the eating of the Passover offering, the children of Israel went out with a strong outstretched arm of God. Elam Melamed. So that the good Talmud clarifies it like this, because this it's not clear. Was it at night or day? So the Talmud says, the Gemara says, the redemption began in the evening, at night. That's when it started. The beginning of the redemption was at night. The end of the redemption was during the day. So it was a process. Now, just if you think about it just for a moment before we continue, there's 3 million people had to be on the move. So it takes a few hours, let's just say. Of course, it was a miracle, and the way, whatever that entails, to have such a big crowd moving along. The Rebbe continues, he says, this also has to be clarified and explained. How could it be that redemption was both during the day and during the night. Firstly, day and night are two opposites. How could this idea, this matter of redemption, be in these two opposite sides, in two opposites? Especially according to the teaching that we mentioned, that it was at high noon, so that God was so, like he was saying, no one's going to stop this. I'll do it smack in the middle of the day. Not in the middle of the night, you're not going to sneak out, but at high noon, at the strength of the day. The part of the redemption that it was night, it says it was at midnight, the middle of the night. Like Rashi says, quoting the Medrash, which the midnight is the strength of the darkness of the night. Like it's explained elsewhere, that for the first half of the night, meaning from sunset and onward, it keeps on getting darker. And from the second half of the night, it's already beginning, the daylight is starting to sparkle and to shine. Which means that the ultimate and the strength of the night is exactly at midnight, because if it starts getting lighter after that, so midnight is exactly the darkest part. The high noon is the lightest part, and they're both quoted and they're both explained to be at the time of the redemption. If that's the case, then the two matters that we're talking about here, day and night, are two polar opposites, from one end of the spectrum to the other. So if that's the case, then we have to really understand how is it that the redemption would be at both parts, the pinnacle of darkness, the pinnacle of light. The Rebbe says that the Rebbe Rashab also, in his specific study of this, he says that it's a night of guarding for God. What do you mean it was guarding for God? What is that? The verse says afterwards a second time, this is the night that is for God as a night as guarding, a time of guarding. Why is it repeated? Why is it doubled over in the verse? And now, here we have it in dollars and cents. To understand all this, we have to really explain first the whole idea of what is the exodus in our day-to-day service to God, in our spiritual service. In other words, the exodus isn't just something that happened historically, but it's something that we can actually experience every single day. Like we know in the Shema, it says that we have to think about it, mention it, and we actually experience it in our own life. We leave our Egypts. So the Rebbe explains that this exodus is in our body, in our soul of every human being. The avoid is each and every day. Like it says that for the purpose that you remember the day of the exodus from the land of Egypt all the days of your life. This idea of remembering the exodus, which is the exodus in our day-to-day life, we have every single day while we serve God. And he explains in the Maimer that I was referring to, the Rebbe Rashab, it's not just our exodus and leaving the confines of our limitations and our bond and the boundaries of what's called the other side of the influences that are influencing us not to do what we should do. Just like there's an Egypt here on this earth, there's also one in a supernal Egypt in the spiritual sense and even in the holy sense, not just in the unholy sense, because everything that's not holy stems from something which is holy. And from that, Egypt we also have to leave. Well, then what is that all about? We have to explain. The Mekiv says that we need Shakdusha. If it's holy, it's holy, then why are we calling it bondage and boundary and limitation in Egypt? Why do we have to leave it? We'll understand this when we'll discuss the idea, the fact that to bring out our emotional characteristics and our attributes of our soul, each and every person's individual way of working, and in the emotional part, the feelings, this comes first from the intellect. The intellect is the one that is the source, the root of that. The intellect can rule over the heart. The intellect influences the heart. And even though it says that there are three rulers in the body, the intellect, the heart, and the liver, and that is actually an acronym for Melech. Melech means king, so that's Moyach for the Mem, Lev for the heart, and Koved is the liver. But even amongst those three rulers, the intellect is the primary leader. Shall we say the supreme leader? The head is higher than the heart. That's why the beginning of the year, we don't call it New Year, we call it the head of the year. Because the head of the year, it's like the same as the head of the body, which is the source and the ruler of all of the limbs. And the intellect is also higher than the attributes of the heart. They rule over them. Then, when we work with our attributes and our characteristics of our emotions, etc., that all is a revelation of how it was in the intellect. Now we have to explain that some more. How does the feelings come from the intellect? Intellect and feelings are two separate things, right? The feelings don't always make sense. It's what you feel. Moichin is calculated. It's cold. Feelings are warm, active. So the moichin aim b'menucha davke. Intellect is rested. Like it says, the phrase is that the intellect and the knowledge that's cool, calm, and collected, and it's settled. But the attributes are with a great noise. Hanikra v'loshen Ashkenaz humul tumul, v'loshen Yiddish humul tumul, like it's called, like we say in Yiddish, it's the humul tumul, a great commotion. V'chein hu gam begashmis, that's what it is physically. The chliya moyech hukar, the actual temperature of the brain matter is cooler than the other parts in the body. But the heart, which is the sanctuary of the attributes of the emotions, the heart beats the whole time. The heartbeat. It's always moving. Lots of going and coming, pounding, beating. The fact that the intellect is the source of the emotions and the attributes, the characteristics, that's just the actual action point of the intellect, so to speak. It's the result of what was thought about and figured out, and then it can bounce something into motion. So when the attributes come forth from the intellect, that's after the removal of what's called the light of the of the intellectual process, of the thought process. After everything's been figured out, that it brings, you thought about something, then you get happy, or you get sad, or you get angry, or you get contrite, or you get whatever else it is that you're feeling. Because there was something that, it's the result of a process, of an intellectual process. So then when you got to what you thought about, then that sparks and that's the catalyst for the emotion. So it's just the result of the prior process. So when it's just in the intellectual part and you're still thinking about it, and you have the depth of the idea and the breadth of the understanding and the development of the idea of bina, of the hamakas hadas, and then it resulting in the real understanding and the result, which is the knowledge. It's not yet. That's not yet the emotion that you feel, and that doesn't even create it. But as a result, then you have what the not only the result, but the action that it will bring you to. That can already be the resource to make and bring about the feelings and the emotions. And the result within the intellectual idea also can't just transform from being an intellectual idea to a feeling. It's a process it has to go through, and this is what this idea is called the blockage of the neck, so to speak. And the head is broad, right? The body is broad, and the neck is narrow. So the narrowing of the neck, so to speak, it breaks down the ideas, and it allows them to then funnel and get channeled into and turned into the emotions. The kashanim to be the masechel meiras leimik the chokma berich the bina v'ham kizadas leitov giyem zei savas amidus v'dav kashanish letzlei lakabachin efshalius mizei savas amidus omnam gam habachin shebasechel atzvei dain en yochel isabik muhus sechel muhus midus dei memutza. So this is the intermediary that brings about this process, as mentioned. Shehu meitzar hagoren is this narrowing of the passage of the neck. And this brings about this concentration in the intellectual idea. It transforms the result of whatever it was that you thought, and what you came to. That transforms it from being made up of an intellectual idea to your emotion.
From
you can even see this physically, like we just mentioned. Even though the neck actually has a dimension, right, length, width, and depth, but it is narrower than the width of the head. So now we understand what is the limitation and boundary even of holiness. That's considered also the limitation of the narrowing of the neck, which allows it to draw forth the attributes and the emotions, the characteristics of holiness from the intellectual process within holiness. The keshem shebetzir ha'adam, because a person has to love God, a person has to fear God. That comes from thinking about God. So we also have to take it from our thought to our feeling. The keshem shebetzir ha'adam hatachni yeshmeitzer hagorin kach hu gam ba'adam elyon. The same way, just like the human being has the narrowing passage of the neck, so it is in the supernal man, in God, so to speak. We are called people, the person on this world, because we are similar, like the word Adam has the same as Dimyon, Adama, similar to the supernal man, so to speak. God created us in His image. So this concentration and being tempered, in the holiness that it came forth from the intellect. Now it has to, even though it came from the holy part of the intellect, but it has to be then tempered and changed into the holy attributes, emotions, and feelings. This is a gute Zach. It's a good thing. B'shvil gilui v'hisavus hamidus, in order to reveal and to develop the emotions that are the good emotions towards God. And through this, that brings about action. We love God and fear God the right way. That brings about that's the impetus to proper performance of mitzvahs and fulfillment of what the Torah prescribes in our day-to-day life. So now from this we can understand what the Exodus from Egypt is in the holy sense. Since Mitzrayim, Egypt, means the narrowing passage of the neck, and that whole idea is to temper and to concentrate and to separate between the intellectual idea and the feelings. So then we know that this Exodus piece means that we draw in the holiness, but we transform it and turn it into the proper feelings. So therefore, what it means to leave, to exit, that's to ensure that in our characteristics and our emotions, we should have the proper focus, and it should, the shine of the intellect should be illuminating those emotions. The Torah intellect should have an effect, and it should be the right way. And just like it is, just like you thought about this, how great God is, but now you bring it into the love of God. And this is by drawing forth what's called the great part of the intellect, the innermost of the intellect. And then the great part of the intellect is then able to illuminate its ideas and its process, it's the result of its understanding into the feelings in a proper way, even though it's transformed from an intellectual idea to an emotional process, into a feeling, to a characteristic of how we do things. The Yesod al Ken, and even more so. This great part of the intellect can also now uncover and reveal things that are hidden deep in our emotions. And then we can get to even the root of the emotions, which is a very high source. Because emotional characteristics are lower, then that means that their source is higher. As we discussed many times, whatever is lower here is sourced higher. So whatever is higher falls away further. Therefore, elsewhere it's explained that the deepest part of our neshama, the deepest part of our soul, you think, where is that? That's probably the pinnacle of whatever we have, and our highest faculty, that would be the intellect. But no, that's not where it is. The yechida, the deepest part of our soul, is in the lev. It's in the heart. Not in the intellect. Because the root of the attributes and the characteristics and the emotions is higher than the root of the intellect. This is the Exodus from Egypt. This exiting from Egypt, this that we are able to leave the intellectual limitation and bring it into the enthusiasm of the emotions, and that is through the narrow passage of the neck. But it's a passage. It's a narrower passage, but it allows some of that shine from even the deepest part of the intellect in to influence those emotions. Then we get from the root, which is the highest aspect of the emotions, which really, in their source within God Himself, they're higher than the way ultimately the way we feel it here, and that's even higher because it's for the purpose of this feeling that God had, that then the intellectual process created it, etc. Because remember, at creation, God wanted to have the world in this way, and then it's the intellect that then facilitated that. So this is what we mean, that it was in the very essence of the day. That is illustrative of the strength of the revelation of the intellectual idea that will come out later in emotion. Even from the greatest part of the intellect and the innermost of the intellect, that turns the night into a night which is called guarded, special. Night meaning the emotional part is then a night, not just a plain old night, but a night which is called guarded, special. The strength of the emotions and the emotional attributes and characteristics in a good way. The night also transforms into day, and the night illuminates like day. That's the idea of a redemption. To the extent that the source, the root of the emotional attributes are then illuminating, and they're in play, and those are even higher than the intellect that causes them to happen. So it sort of goes down and it reaches up to its source, which is higher than where it started with. The darkness can move in terms of its mystery and promote the inner and bigger idea. That's what it says, the night of guarding for God. Actually, it's godly. Through transforming the night into day, we have an additional flow of godly energy and godly light, and that's only made possible with God Himself. And that's why it says it twice, a second time, because after the process, this really shows us how something which is really intrinsically dark and tough can be turned into something which is great and powerful and used for the right purpose. That it's guarded for God. Transformation is like the serving of God through repentance, through transformation, through taking things that were not okay, things that were misdeeds, and turning them into merits. And that's something that's a double. It's not just forgiveness to say, okay, I'll overlook that, but if one does tshuva in the proper way, in the proper repentance, with the proper love of God, then even the misdeeds become good deeds. From the idea of the exodus from Egypt spiritually, that comes back now to the physical exodus from Egypt, that the night becomes day. It actually illuminates, it really becomes light, and the darkness is removed. That's what it'll be in the future redemption. Like it says in the prophecy, that like the days of Egypt, I will show you wonders. Even more than that, the wonders will be wonders in relation to the wonders that were already at the time of the Exodus. It'll be even greater, because it'll be, then there was wonders, and there'll be wonders in relation to those wonders. And speedily nowadays, actually so.
Amen.